Well, being said, their projections and retractions making the figures count 2.9% to 3.3%. I have the Chief Executive Officer of Chukwu Assets Limited, Johnson Chukwu. He joins me now via Skype. Mr. Johnson, it's great to have you join us on the show, and it was great seeing you yesterday.
Thank you. It was nice seeing you last night.
Yeah, but a lot of meetings now on Investment Summit in the UK, World Economic Forum on in Davos. What do you see? What's at stake for African countries at this time?
Well, let's start from the UK African Investment Summit that was held yesterday. The basic thing for African economies are they are looking for investment opportunities. African economies are looking for sources of funding for infrastructure. They are looking for funds and investment in real sector and manufacturing activities. They are looking for investors that will create opportunities for the teaming 420 million young Africans to be employed, to be gainfully employed. When the British Prime Minister invited them for another round of Africa Plus investment summit, because we have a couple of them in the past. We've had the one with Russia, we have several with China, and the African countries, about 21 African countries leaders went there. I believe they were looking for kind of a more mutually rewarding trade and investment agreement with Britain.
Mr. Johnson, now let's move to WEF briefly because we really need to manage time today. What are your expectations? We've talked about fourth industrial revolution, talked about lots of issues around tax and a sustainable environment. What do you see this? What positives do you see this giving us as Africans? And Africans seems to be the new bride. Everyone wants to work with Africa. Why?
Well, if you talk of, people want to work with Africa because Africa has a huge untapped potential. Africa has about 1.2 billion people living in Africa. Like I did mention, Africa has the youngest labor force in the world, about 420 million young able-bodied men and women. But when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, I do not think many African countries are prepared for the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is underpinned by the knowledge economy. And if you look at the educational curriculum in a country like Nigeria, that has the largest population in Africa, have about 20 billion African population, you realize that the quality of education we currently have in the country is not attuned to position Nigeria to compete in the fourth industrial revolution. So the key thing is that if we are talking about fourth industrial revolution, we need to look at the educational system. We need to invest in education. We need to invest in inclusiveness of education, the quality in terms of curriculum. We must invest in STEM education, that's in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's the only way we can position our young people to be ready for the fourth industrial revolution.
I want us to also touch briefly on always identifying when someone like IMF, World Bank come with predictions, they talk about global slowdowns, talking about shocks and all of that. In all of this picture, you see them coming down from going to 3.3%, 0.1% down projections before now. What do you think is responsible for all of this at this time, despite efforts by countries to actually try and re-engineer and reactivate their systems?
Well, among the areas that they felt that the emerging economies of the world may see a slowdown in their growth. And if you look at the emerging economies are the major source of support in growth. Particularly, they made reference to a country like India, where they think growth will slow down in the current year and the following year, that's 2021 as well. And India today is one of the largest economies in the world. India was growing about 6.57% until recently. So if India slows down in terms of economic growth, it could affect the global economic growth rate. Also, look at China. We've seen some level of moderation in the Chinese economic growth rate. So between those two economies, they have the weight of their economies can have the impact of slowing down or knocking off about 0.1% in global economic growth rate.
All right there, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, Chief Executive Officer, Chukwu Assets Limited. Thank you very much for your time on Business Nigeria today.